What's going on, everybody? Dr. Goku here, and welcome back to part 3 of the Dragon Ball Timeline series. Now today, I'm going to be covering and going through each of the movies and OVAs and where they fit, as well as also go through Dragon Ball Xenoverse, Dragon Ball Online, Heroes, and other games. Even though all but Dragon Ball Online is considered quote-unquote canon, today we're not going to be focusing on what is or what isn't canon, but instead we're going to be seeing each of these individually for their own continuity. But before we begin, I wanted to give a huge shout out to Anti-Metaman over on Twitter for his Kaizenshuu post. Like the 2 previous timeline videos, without his post and the information that he provided in them, I wouldn't be able to be doing these videos. I'm going to leave a link in the description below to his Twitter account as well as to the Kaizenshuu post, so that way you guys can check it out. I highly recommend it because it's a great read. Timeline 1. The main timeline. So since this is the main timeline, the same one that we watch on TV, it has to be consistent with the manga and the anime. Thus, Dragon Ball Minus occurs in this timeline instead of the Bardock OVA. After Gine and Bardock send Goku to Earth, Bardock makes his last stand against Frieza in space. This would then allow both Dragon Ball Minus manga and Frieza's flashback, the 2 panels in chapter 307, to become canon. Then there's fillers such as the Garlic Jr. saga that can easily occur after Frieza and the Namek saga, and as well as the Afterlife tournament can still be placed and not contradict anything within the story. So beginning with movie 1, The Dead Zone, it occurs after the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai tournament, but before Raditz arrives. Now movies 2, 3, and 4 can occur during the Saiyan saga, with Goku having knowledge of the Kaioken, but the other Z warriors would have been killed by Nappa, so there would be a giant contradiction of these movies. Now movies 5 and 6, on the other hand, they could occur during the 3-year gap prior to the androids arriving, even though there is one issue, since Frieza never mentioned his brother, not even a single time, even after he was revived by his father, and again in Revival of F. Movie 7 can't fit since it occurs very quickly after Android 17 kills Dr. Gero, but before the Cell Saga. Movies 8, 10, and 11 don't occur in this timeline, since Goku and Vegeta never mentioned Broly's name, even after they saw Kale's Berserker transformation during the Tournament of Power. This would be implying that the first time they would be seeing Kale's transformation would be the first time they saw something similar to it. Movie 9 can indeed occur immediately after the Cell Game saga, and the only other weird placement that we're going to have is movies 12 and 13, since with them occurring in the middle of the Buu saga. Now we know that Vegeta is dead in movie 12, and he isn't in movie 13, so he can't be logically placed after the Buu saga either. The events of Abo, Kato, and Tarbal can be placed right after the Buu saga, and events of Dragon Ball Online, Xenoverse, and Heroes can occur as they do because they take many years after the end of Dragon Ball Z. Timeline 2. The Future Trunks Timeline. Timeline 2 is the same timeline that we saw in the anime that was erased by Zeno. It was created when Trunks killed Imperfect Cell in the future. Now this is the same timeline where we see the history of Trunks OVA happen, as per the manga as well happening. It's where Goku died of the heart virus in age 766, and then 6 months later, androids 17 and 18 attacked South City.
Timeline 3. The original timeline.
In the original timeline, Future Trunks uses the shutdown remote control to destroy androids 17 and 18. And then, a few years later, Imperfect Cell wakes up and finds out that he's unable to find the androids. He then finds Trunks and he kills him. After that, Imperfect Cell takes the time machine and goes back into the past. Now, since there are no strong fighters left on Earth, since everybody's died, Boo can never be revived due to the fact that there is no energy left on Earth for him. And now, my theoretical portion for this timeline is that Babidi and Dabura would spend years and years trying to collect enough energy to revive Boo. Now Shin, or the Supreme Kai, and Kibito would also be able to succeed in stopping Boo's revival. But just like the other timeline, Shin would still be killed by Dabura, which also means that Beerus would also die in the process. Goku Black from Timeline 4 arrives in this timeline, since this is the only timeline without a Beerus, and he's able to recruit Zamasu from here. Black is then able to kill the other 11 Kaioshin and proceed with the Zero Mortals plan to kill all the mortals in all 12 universes. Black never reaches his full potential of Goku's body because there are no strong fighters around in order for him to be able to adapt to this body, so he never is able to get to the Super Saiyan Rose form. Goku Black and Zamasu are able to rule unopposed until Zeno is aware of what's going on. Zeno doesn't end up erasing the timeline since there's no infinite Zamasu. Instead, he only erases Black and Zamasu and the universes with the lowest mortal level. At this point, now new Kaioshins are appointed and life begins to create again in order to increase the mortal level, which is now the job of all of the new Kaioshins.
Timeline 4. The Unseen Timeline.
It takes 1 full year for future Bulma to create enough fuel for the time machine in order for Trunks to travel back to the past again. So now 1 year passes and it's age 785 when Trunks travels back to the past to age 767. He traveled back so that he can study the androids, find their weakness, and if anything, he would bring back Goku to his future. So Trunks arrived May 12th, age 767 in the past, and as the story goes, both him and Krillin find Dr. Gero's secret lab, and they also find the blueprints to androids 17 and 18. Having these blueprints, Trunks now decides to travel back to his timeline to give the blueprints to Bulma. Bulma is able to use the blueprints to create a shutdown controller similar to the one that the past Bulma created for Krillin, and he was going to use on Android 18, but didn't. With the controller, Trunks was able to defeat the androids in age 786. 2 years later, it's now age 788, and Imperfect Cell finally shows up. But he's unable to find the androids, and so he can't become complete. He ends up finding out that Trunks has a time machine, so he ends up killing him and traveling back to the past to age 763, 1 year before Trunks first arrived in the past. Now, just because Cell traveled to 1 year before Trunks even came to the past, this does not mean that history has been changed yet. There hasn't been a creation of a paradox. The moment that a paradox was created was when Trunks found the photos of his own time machine, and he also found out about Cell's cocoon. By finding the photos of his time machine, this is the event that caused Trunks to stay in the past so that he could train in the hyperbolic time chamber with Vegeta. We know that in the future, Trunks was able to defeat Cell because he trained with Vegeta. So when Cell traveled to the past, he technically wasn't the one who created the paradox because it was based on Trunks finding the photographs. This second paradox has now caused the timeline to be split into Timeline 1 and into Timeline 4, also known as the Unseen Timeline. But the problem with the Unseen Timeline is that in the Daizenshu 7, it states that the Cell Games began without Trunks. Now if we strictly abide to the Daizenshu 7, then there is a Cell Games without Trunks. And in order for this to happen, Trunks had to have come back the second time in age 767, find the blueprints for the androids, but leave before seeing the pictures of his old time machine and Cell's cocoon. So this timeline split happened only after Trunks saw the photos and decided not to leave in order to train with Vegeta, but that's what caused the paradox. This also allows for two perfect cells to exist in two timelines. That being Timeline 4, where there's a Cell Games but no Trunks, and Timeline 1, where there's the Cell Games with Trunks, and everything plays out as we saw in the anime. In Timeline 4, when there is no Trunks, this means that Vegeta never has this enraged rampage moment because of Trunks dying, and Gohan doesn't lose his left arm when trying to save Vegeta. Gohan still ends up defeating Cell, but this time he does it with a two-handed Kamehameha wave. Meanwhile, the rest of history plays out exactly the same, with the Buu Saga happening, Battle of Gods, Resurrection F, the Universe 6 tournament, etc.
So after Future Trunks gave Goku the heart medication, the Z Warriors would train for 3 years. During this period, movies 5 and 6 would occur, and Cooler would be killed. In that meantime, Vegeta would be off-world trying to become a Super Saiyan, which explains why he wasn't there during movie 5, and now Future Trunks would return 3 years later to age 767 when Android 17 would kill Dr. Gero after he woke up. Since this happened, Dr. Gero wouldn't have the additional tweaks to Android 17 and 18, which would make them weaker than their main timeline counterparts. Android 16 is not activated during this timeline, and due to the lack of how and who Android 16 was, Android 17 and 18 are more hostile and more willing to kill. They appear first in South City instead of Dr. Gero and Android 19. Together with Trunks, 3 Super Saiyans defeat the androids. Later, the supercomputer that was in the basement of Dr. Gero's lab was able to activate androids 13, 14, and 15, but these androids are much weaker than androids 17 and 18, and so the events of movie 7 are able to occur, and we're able to get Super Android 13, who is then defeated by Goku. Trunks is able to locate Dr. Gero's basement lab blueprints for Android 17. In this timeline, there are no Cell Games, and the Z Warriors do not train in the Room of Spirit and Time. Goku and Gohan are able to train together, and that's where Gohan is able to learn to become a Super Saiyan. Later on, Paragus arrives on Earth and invites Vegeta to come to New Planet Vegeta. There, all of the warriors meet Broly, but it's Trunks that participates not to train in the Room of Spirit and Time. So there's a difference from the exact events of movie 8. The Z Warriors are easily defeated by Broly, and just as Broly is about to kill Goku, Gohan temporarily turns into a Super Saiyan 2 and hits Broly, weakening him enough for Goku to go then take the opportunity to absorb all of the remaining energies of the warriors. He uses a Super Kamehameha wave to send Broly into space. Broly then drifts in space for about 7 years and is frozen in ice. In the meantime, Trunks takes the blueprints from Dr. Gero to his future timeline, where he's able to create the remote control that is developed by future Bulma. He is later killed in Timeline 3 by Imperfect Cell. In this timeline, Kami and Piccolo decide not to fuse since there is no Cell. Instead of there being a Cell Games, there is a hooded figure that collects the Dragon Balls in order to revive Frieza, and the events of the real 4D occur. Goku's able to kill Frieza once more with a massive Spirit Bomb, unlike the first time, and the events of the Buu saga occur just as they're supposed to, during which Piccolo and Kami then decide to fuse. Then they becomes the new guardian of Earth, and the events of the Buu saga play out as they're supposed to. The events of Battle of Gods, Resurrection F, and the Universe 6 arc all occur normally as they would in other timelines. After the events of the Universe 6 tournament, the events of Dragon Ball Z, the real 4D, at a Super Tenkaichi Budokai occur. A Battle Royale tournament is held on Earth where people aboard a Capsule Corp ship watch. Broly God interrupts them, who has appeared suddenly, and thanks to Shenron, Goku is able to perform the God fusion with the people on the Capsule Corp ship. He's able to finish off God Broly with a Kamehameha wave. Later, Zamasu watches Goku on GodTube, and Zamasu succeeds in switching bodies with Goku to become black, and leaves this timeline to timeline 3. Unlike other timelines, here Zeno is alone and has no friend to play with that Goku would have promised him. Without a Goku in this timeline, there is no tournament of power. Zeno erases the 8 universes with the lowest mortal level, and we never have the same events happen that we would have happened in timeline 1. Now I think I'm going to stop here and cover timelines 5, 6, and 7, as well as all of the events of Dragon Ball Xenoverse in a second video to part 3. Let me know what you guys think of the events that I explained for timelines 1, 2, 3, and 4, and if you would have done it somehow differently. And also, let me know what you think of the video as a whole. I really hope that everyone enjoyed this video. And till the next one, hope you have a good one.